Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is one that is a patron suggested or patron requested video. And if you are on YouTube and watch sewing videos often, then you've probably been seeing this one floating out and about here and there. But it's the Triskele. And if you haven't seen it, it's a really great wallet. It's a fun skill builder. It has a really cool design, tons of card slots, has 12 card slots, and an ID window and 2 cash areas, cash check. Depending on your phone, it'll also fit in one of the cash areas, and then also has this great zip pouch there. So it's like a trifold style, very structured wallet. And when I first put the pattern out, it was over 2 years ago, and of course, materials and options for materials have changed in that time frame. And so I wanted to do this video to give you kind of just some random updates about how I make the Triskeles these days. Mainly it's just a switch in like interfacing or stabilizer, things like that. But you may have seen it from last month or a couple months ago. Lauren Mormino and I did a live video where we made the Triskele, and that just brought new life into this pattern. And then Jess over at Oakler Roots made it for the bee sewing box, the bee sampler. I'm probably really murdering that name, but the sewing bee box, I don't know. The link will be in the description box. I'm the worst. But so she made the pattern as well, and she made some cool modifications where she like pieced the exterior. So I'll link that video. If it's not down in the description box, it'll be up in this area. But yeah, so it was requested by my patrons to just do a straightforward start to finish new construction video with updated tips and tricks, and that's what I have for you today. So without further ado, I hope that you enjoy the Triskele wallet. Okay, so materials overview. The most important thing is a sassy cat, but we have the exterior. The exterior is the smallest of the 3 pieces. That's how you will know that it is the exterior. If you have a cool panel that you want to use, this is a great spot to use it on. I have one of the lining panels and then the other lining panel. Now you'll notice I already have my ID window cut out, and I have all of my card slots cut as well on both of my panels. Now I used my acrylic templates for this, but you can certainly use the SVG files or just the paper pattern. They're all the same. And I used a marking pen. Okay, kitty. And I transferred all of my marks here along the back, as well as my magnetic snap placements. These are going to denote the fold lines later in the construction process. Kitty, no. So you want to go ahead and transfer those lines to all 3 of your pieces. And now when you're cutting out your card slots, you can, if you're not using a cutter or like a SVG file, I use a rotary blade and I slice just here down the center, and then I take a pair of scissors and snip all the way to the ends. So that way I ensure that I don't overcut my lines here. Because if they are too wide, you might get some slippage with the card slot or with the cards coming out of the card slots. And we obviously do not want that, because the orientation of this wallet has card slots entering from this side and as well as this side. So depending on which way you have the wrist strap connected, there will always be cards hanging out toward the bottom. I designed it in such a way that you should not have any slipping problems. I have not personally had that show up in mine, but if you do cut your card slots too wide, you could that could happen. Another alternative is you can orientate it to where the card slots are on the same side, and then you always have your wrist strap at the opposite end. So then whenever you're holding it, gravity will hold all the cards in. However, I designed it specifically this way to offset the balance of all the cards, so all the cards weren't on one side. But I've seen it work with all the card slots on one side. That's really not an issue. And it even works like, because if you have coins in here, what's going to happen is your coins will fall to the bottom while your cards stay up at the top. So it might, even out the width at the end of the day. So that's a personal preference, totally up to you. Depending on the way that you cut your lines, you might notice that your orientation is opposite of mine, and that's totally fine too. It does not matter. I am right-handed, and I just always take out my ID with my left hand, which is why I designed it to be like this, which kind of doesn't make sense when I'm saying it out loud. But you can feel free to flip-flop these guys around as needed when you're cutting it, not after it's been cut. If you cut it a certain way, that's the way that the cookie crumbles. But if you take care to pay attention in the beginning when you're cutting out your card slots, you can flip the orientation by flipping the pattern piece upside down. But just make sure that you're flipping both of them upside down. Okay, anyways, I hope that's not too confusing. So we have all of our main pieces here. I have my wrist strap. This is going to be the D-ring connector. So this is going to lay right in here at the top. And that's going to help give that top fold some real nice definition. I have 2 zip tabs. I have my zipper with my cute little pop tab zipper pull. I got that from Mormino. This is number 3 zip tape from Wawak. I have my vinyl ID window, and I'm not sure what you can tell, but I have an oval stamped out of it for a thumb hole. And to do that, I bought this little guy. Sorry, I can't tell what you can see with Druzy. She kind of blends. But I got this little guy, and it's really sharp on one edge, and I lay it on my vinyl centered, and then I hit it with a hammer, and I can cut out several pieces of vinyl at the same time to create that thumb hole. They also have tons of other shapes that you could use if you wanted a cute little, like a heart or a star or rectangle, what have you. But if you search leather punch, you'll find these guys. And then finally I have my hardware. So I have 2 D-rings, and then I have 2 sets of magnetic snaps. Now I generally use 14mm snaps. You can use 18 if you'd like. If you use 18, you need to be aware of how close they come to the edge whenever you're sewing, so that way you don't mess up your stitch lines there. You can use the thick snaps, or you can use thin. It's totally up to you. I am using up the last of these thick snaps that I have, but generally speaking, I like to stick with 14mm thin snaps. Druzy, are you hiding anything? Excuse me. Oh, she is. So I also have recently started adding these types of tags to my more expensive, nicer pieces. And I think that they just really elevate the look of this wallet. And you can see I put it here on the back panel. So I have that along with the washer that it comes with. And that's where we're going to get started. I'm going to get all of my prep work out of the way. So if you're new to my channel, then what you'll quickly find is that I write patterns in the way that I expect people will want to make them, but then 9 times out of 10, the way that I do my videos is different. So I like to approach projects with getting all the prep work out of the way, all the annoying stuff, making straps, things like that, prior to the fun part of actual construction. So then at the end, you don't have to wait on any of that stuff. And most patterns are written, and mine as well, where you go exterior, interior, and you work in chunks based on the part of the bag that you're working on or the part of the wallet. But I like to do all of my prep work for everything, and then I work through as needed. So to get started, I'm going to add my zipper tabs. Now you can see I've got my zipper pull on already, and I've got a slight little bubble here in the end. So what I'm going to do is just slide my pull closer to the end, and I'm going to situate it in such a way where I can hide that bubble once I have my snaps or my zipper tab ends attached. Oh wait, I just remembered. I forgot to show you the interfacing. So let's chat about interfacing real quick. When I first wrote the pattern, the thickest, strongest interfacing that I could find on the market was Peltex, oh no, that's Flexhome, but Peltex, I don't know the name, but it's by Pellin, and it is a nice alternative to these, but it's not nearly as stiff. And it's also it's got some thickness to it. So throughout the years, I've been playing around with other interfacings and stabilizers because I like my wallets to hold their shape really nicely. You can see it has this nice box bottom and nice box top, and it's nice and stiff, but I don't want them to be so inflexible that they're a weapon in your bag. So what I have found, and this was total trial by error, is Craft Tex. Craft Tex is a paper textile that you can use. It is extremely thin, but it is nice and strong. It really holds its shape very, very well. So this is what I have been using on all of my Triskeles for the last while. I had originally bought Craft Tex to do just some other projects with to try it out, and I just did not like the way that it looked in a wallet or a bag, so now I've been using it as interfacing. Other alternatives are Decaville Heavy, and so Decaville Heavy is nice and structured as well, or you can even use Decaville Light, but I would use at least 2, if not 3 layers of Decaville Light. Now again, it's a personal preference on how stiff you want your wallet. I like a wallet that's going to hold its shape, retain the look, and not get bent out of shape when it's in use. So I have all of my stabilizer cut, and all of these measurements, of course, are in the pattern, but I have the big piece. This will go along the back. Then I have the top and bottom sections, and now I have the one singular piece. This is going to go under the top flap, and then I have one piece that is wider, but I folded it in half to create the correct width, because I want 2 layers on this bottom. So the way that this works is like this. So this piece will be the flap. This piece will go here along the inside top, back, underneath, and then along the bottom as such. Now the reason you do not need 2 pieces here, like you need 2 pieces here, is because of this strip. So because we have cork here, we also have the D-rings, you don't need 2 pieces of interfacing because it holds its shape really, really nicely. And then while I'm thinking about it, a note on the D-ring size. I would not go any bigger than 3/4 of an inch. This box top and the box bottom measures 1 inch wide. And so if you go more than 3/4 of an inch on your hardware, it's gonna change the entire shape of the wallet. So it's just something to consider. I like to use 1/2 inch hardware. You can even get away with 3/8 inch right here. You can do 3/4 inch and smaller, 5/8 inch, you know, down the line, but nothing bigger than 3/4 of an inch. A note about adhesives. Throughout the video, you'll see me use a combination of glue and double stick tape. You'll see that I have all 3 sizes of tape here. The really skinny is 1/8 inch. This midsection, or on the right for me, is 1/4 inch. And then of course I've got the big whopper over here with 1/2 inch. I have recently become a huge fan of 1/2 inch tape because I like to use it in place of glue. Whenever I'm attaching 2 really large pieces, a lot of times I don't have the hand strength, if I'm being honest. Sewing every day, all day, I'm losing a lot of strength in my hand. And so I find that sometimes using this glue can be taxing on my hand muscles. So I've been really a fan of double stick tape. So you'll see me swap back and forth throughout the video, and it kind of just depends on what I'm working on and what I'm, you know, doing. Oh, I forgot. This is the ID window backing. And then I have my zipper lining. I'll show you in here. So the zipper lining is down in there. Now I usually never interface my zipper lining, but you will notice that this is, and that's only because I had this left over from another project and it didn't work out, and it actually just fits perfectly with this project. So this is interfaced. You can certainly interface it if you want to, but I never interface any of these 3 pieces. But for those of you that might ask, this is Decaville Light on the back of mine. So there we go. Now to get started, I am going to work out of order for my pattern. If you are new here, welcome. I am a beacon of chaos. So I write patterns in the way that most patterns are written, where I chunk it down by whichever part of the project you're working on, but the way that I work is different. I like to knock out all of my prep work, regardless of what side of the bag or wallet it's on, and then I move through all of the steps as outlined in the pattern, usually. So if my video doesn't reflect the pattern, which I'm certain that it won't, that's why. So to get started, I've got all of my prep work here and ready to go. I need to attach my zipper tab ends. I'm gonna fold up my wristlet strap. I'm gonna attach my D-rings to my D-ring attachment strap. And then I'm also going to add my tag. But first, let's get our zipper tabs onto here. So I'm going to use glue for this. Now this glue is the easy tearaway glue. This other glue, you can tell the color difference. It's a little bit more yellow. It's a lot thicker. This is from Wawak. This is the Hyper Stick, and this white terrible tape is from the Sewing Room in Garner. I'm going to put just a strip of tape along one short edge of each zipper tab. Something else that I did off camera, because it's boring and it's easier to explain, is on every raw edge on the wallet, I went ahead and I added a layer of Mod Podge. So on one long edge of my strap, the edge that'll be exposed, I did that. I did it down both long edges here. I did it on one short edge of each of these. And I think, oh, and then I also did my ID window, which I usually don't do that, but I got carried away. All right, so I'm going to peel off my tape. Now I'm going to start by laying it on this side, that has that weird little bubble. And to get the bubble out of the way, I'm just going to squeeze my zipper tape together with my nails and then attach my zipper tab like so. And then what I like to do instead of measuring is I just lay my zipper up against the exterior because I need it to be as wide as the main panel here. And so now I know if I line up this side, I'm just going to lay this zipper tab to where it lines up on this other side. Press that tape into place and move that out of the way. Next, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fold up my wristlet strap. Now I have Mod Podge this edge here, which means I want that to be on top whenever I'm folding it, because we're going to be folding it into thirds. So I'm going to fold the non-Mod Podged edge up 1/2 inch and then encase that raw edge with the top. Now I can make these in my sleeve, but if you need to, you can certainly mark where you need it to be. You can also use tape or you can use clips, you know, do whatever you're comfortable with doing. Okay, now this guy is ready for sewing. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my D-ring attachment strap and I'm going to take my 1/4 inch tape and I'm going to put a strip right along the center. Now I started doing this, I started paying a lot of attention to where I'm laying my double stick tape, because when I use the Hyper Stick from Wawak, it is hyper sticky and my needle doesn't like it, it gums it up. But I have found with this terrible tape, I think because it's not so thick, it's not as sticky, but it still works, but my needle doesn't mind this tape. So that's just a note. But yeah, I try to keep tape in as much of, or as out of my seams as possible. But with the Sewing Room of Garner tape, it's not a big issue. But if you're using Wawak tape, definitely try to keep it out of your stitch line. Okay, so I peeled the tape off and I'm going to slide one D-ring on. And I'm just kind of eyeballing it. Obviously I'm not measuring it, but what I'm going to do is just, I'm going to lay and stick that down. And then I'm going to grab my exterior and I'm just going to eyeball where I need this other D-ring to go. Now again, there are measurements for everything in the pattern, so don't fret if you're not comfortable with this pattern yet. But what I'm looking for is where I'm going to lay this D-ring and where I want it to sit in the top section when I'm sewing it. So there's about 1/4 inch on either side of each D-ring, and that's perfect for me. I don't care that this side is longer than this side. That does not matter to me, because when I sew it, I'm going to be sewing over both of those edges and it's not going to be noticeable. So no harm, no foul. Now, the trick for this is to make sure that you don't accidentally stick it to anything. You can stick your paper back to it, keep it out of the way. The last thing that we need to get ready for, or before we move over to the sewing machine, is our exterior panel. And what we're going to do is install our tag and our magnetic snaps. Now, What you really need to remember is that where these two magnetic snap marks are, this is the bottom. So whenever you're making this pattern, this piece right here is this piece right here. So these magnetic snaps are at the bottom. So when you're measuring for your tag, you need to measure opposite from where the magnetic snaps go. So I'm going to flip, and from the right side, making sure that my magnetic snaps are facing away, I'm going to measure 5.5 inches from this top edge. I'm gonna make a mark, and then I'm also gonna measure a center line. And this is going to tell me where I need to make my marks to install my tag. So again, this side is the bottom, so make sure that your tag has the right orientation. And what I'm gonna do is line up the bottom of my tag on this line that I drew right here. And I'm gonna use this center line to line up my center on this as well. And to make these marks, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna put some pressure using these prongs. I'm gonna apply pressure and make some indentations into the cork so that I know where to add this tag. I apologize, you're about to see the back of my head. So I just apply pressure, and then the silver is where my indentations are. And if you lose sight of them, you can feel them with your nail. If you gently rub your nail over that area, you'll feel them. So slide your prongs in, and then we need to add our washer along the back side here. Now I'm not concerned with putting tape or anything over here because at the end when I'm adding my stabilizer, I'm gonna put it right along this back panel, and I'll just be sure to add some double stick tape to it then. So now from this side, we need to add our male magnetic snaps. So those are the ones that have the protrusion. I'm gonna take a washer and line it up on the dots that I made, lining up the hole in the washer to the dot, and then I'm marking the lines on both the left and right side. I'm gonna do that on both magnetic snaps. And use my X-Acto blade, make those marks, and then install my snaps. Oh, psych, we're not using the male, we're using the female portion. Geez, I'm glad I caught that. So female portion, we're gonna install that here. If I can find, oh. Like I can make a crude joke right now, but I'll leave it alone. Okay, so same with these. I'm not worried about putting stabilizer or anything on them right now because when I add all the stabilizer at the end, it'll cover those up. So this is what your exterior panel should look like now. So for this color thread, this is all the prep work that I can do because my linings are this deep teal color. Now, if I wanted to, I could totally do contrasting color thread on one or the other, but here lately I've been really vibing with coordinating threads. So I'm going to go stitch around all 4 edges of my snap tab and then down this inside edge here on my zipper snap. Why do I keep calling it a zipper snap? On my zipper tab ends, just along that line there. And so yeah, see you at the machine. Something I did want to point out, you may have noticed that this D-ring connector, I will be using beige thread on this as well. And that is actually going to go on the longest interior piece, the one that has the card slots down here. That will be situated up in this section. Now the reason I'm not going to add this now is basically to make construction easier on you. If I was batch sewing these, I would totally add this where it needs to be at now so that I didn't have to change threads later. However, if you add this weight on this side, it will make the card slots just a touch more challenging. So check in with your skill level, and if you're comfortable with adding your snap tab or your D-ring tab now, you can go ahead and do that. Otherwise, I will show you later in the video. I am using Wawak Amann Tex 70 beige thread, a size 18 needle. I'm using the same thread in the bobbin, and I'm using a size 4 stitch length. And I'm going to start my stitch line here on this open edge so that I can get this side tacked down first. And we're off. And then let's sew our zip tabs. I always like to add some stay stitches when I'm crossing the teeth, just because this area of the wallet's going to get a lot of play. You know, when people are opening and closing their zippers, they're not generally thinking about how rough they're being, so I just like to add some security. That's what that looks like. To finish off my zipper tab, what I'm going to do is pull my zip tab up and out of the way, and I'm just going to trim my zipper down just a touch under here. I want there to be at least 1/4 inch or so overhanging, but I don't want it to stay this long, because what will happen is whenever you're stitching this side together, you'll stitch over it and it just makes it beefier. So I like to, you know, avoid bulk at all costs. Jersey, you were being extra sassy today. You know, the audacity of a cat to come up on my sewing table and then get mad at me when I use it. I always like to singe the edges of my zipper tape. And so now that zip tape is completed, we can put this out of the way until later. I'm going to go ahead and finish off my wristlet strap here, so I'm burning my threads. And then I'm also going to nip my little corners like I do on everything. Straighten up any edges if you need to. And then so from the side that I started and ended my stitches on, that is the side that I want to be tucked into my fold to hide the stitches. So you want to take your nice edge here and you're going to slide your lobster clasp. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you about the lobster clasp when we were going over materials. But so I folded up about 3/4 inch or so, an inch, again, just eyeballing it. Fold it up and over the bottom of your lobster clasp, and then you're going to slide this right in between the middle and sandwich it. And now what I like to do is I just kind of push on both edges to make sure that all of my edges are lined up, and I keep my thumbnail right there on the very edge of it to hold it in place. And I'm going to punch a hole right in the center. Oh, he's locked on me. Just realized I picked up 2 caps and no post. So this is probably a, I don't know, 7mm, 8mm post. And I find that it goes through 3 layers of cork. It's actually 3, 6, 9 layers of cork perfectly. Because your rivets, you want your post to be as wide as what you're riveting through, because if it's longer, then what's going to happen, or what can happen, is a lot of times when it's longer, then whenever you rivet it together, the caps shift and then they can pop off when it's being used. So you want to make sure that they're nice and straight and that you're using a post that matches the width that you need. And then just set that rivet with whatever tool you have on hand. Highly suggest investing in a press if you don't have one already. I waited years to do that, and it's easily one of the silliest mistakes I made with sewing. Okay, clean up my mess here. So next, what I can start on are my card slots. And so now we just need to prep our card slots. I'm going to start with the ID window because I want that to dry. So this is one of those cases where I'm going to use glue and not tape. I don't know why. I just always use glue when I'm putting in my ID windows. So you can tell this cork was rolled up for a long time. So grab your glue and your tape, whatever, and your vinyl. And then on the back side, you want to add glue all around the ID window. I'm not globbing it, but I'm putting enough to make sure that it stays put. If I have any excess, I generally just wipe it because this glue dries very quickly, but then that way it doesn't stick to my sewing machine bed when I'm stitching around. Okay, so there we have that. Usually I put like a ruler or something on top of it to apply some light pressure. Now for my card slots, I like to use double stick tape. You can use 1/8 inch or 1/4 inch, but I do not suggest a 1/2 inch. But what I like to do is I just put a piece of tape above the first card slot and then all the way down and then ending at below the last card slot. And you don't need to do the whole width. I just do enough that will hold my card slot material in place. And then again, I'm trying to keep it centered, but because I'm using this easy tear tape, I know that my machine is not going to be bothered by it. But just as a general rule. Now, when I'm doing this top piece here, I like to make this one a little bit longer because we are not going to stitch at the top. So I do it almost about the width of the card slot. And then we're going to repeat that process on this side with one exception. So I'm going to start at the top. Work my way down. Now the exception is that you don't put it below this card slot here. So you have the first card slot, second card slot, you're going to stop underneath the third card slot. And that is because we need to stitch around our ID window to stitch down our vinyl. And then once we do that, we're going to take our ID window backing and this gets taped or glued all around so that it shows from the front. But what that does is it covers up the first card slot here. So there's no need to put double stick tape there. And if you do put double stick tape there and eventually it gets peeled off, then cards will get stuck going in and out of there. So just don't do double stick tape under the first line or the second line. Now I will take my double stick tape with me over to the sewing machine because once I get this all set into place, we will add a piece, but just don't do it now. Okay, so now we are prepped for these guys. So I'm going to get both my panels and then my card slot material, which is going to be landscaping material. I forgot to cut it, but this is what it looks like. This is the end of the roll, so there's not a whole lot left, but this is this black landscape material. As you can see, it's a little translucent. It is really, really thin and really hard to rip, and I find that it holds up very, very well. I've been using this method for about 9 years, or about probably 8 years now was when I first discovered using landscape material, and it has never let me down, except if you accidentally hit it with heat. So if you have to do any ironing or any fusible anything, do that before you use this stuff. But I'm going to cut my landscape material, and then I'll meet you over at the machine and we're going to inset all of our card slots. I like to start on the ID window side so that way I can let the backing dry while I work on the other card slots. So the first thing I'm going to do is from the right side up, I'm going to stitch all the way around my ID window. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch right underneath this first card slot. And the reason I'm doing that is because if we wait to try to do that until after we add our ID window backing, we're going to stitch the ID window closed. So I call it a dummy stitch in the pattern, but because it's not really stitching anything, it's just for looks so that it blends in. But go ahead and do that now too. So trim up those threads. And then now what we're going to do is we're going to add glue above this first card slot line, down and around, all the way around the ID window, and then we'll lay our ID window backing in place. Now for this, I am adding a decent amount of glue because I do not want this to shift and move around later on. And I tend to go right around where my stitch line is, but I do not get glue on my stitches, or I try not to. So that is what it should look like now. And then once this dries, we'll come back to this one. But for now, what I'm going to do is move it and put something heavy on top of it so it gets all nice and set up. And in the meantime, what we're going to do is work on our card slots on the big panel. So we need our big panel, and we need one piece of landscaping material. This is so wrinkly just because it's the end of the roll, which I feel very proud of myself for. This is probably the third or fourth roll in the 8 years that I've been using it. That's how long you can stretch this. All of the tall wallets, all the Triskeles, all the Gallivanters that I've made, 4 rolls of landscaping material in 8 years. So that is pretty wild. But yeah, okay, so if you've never done these card slots before, do not fear. They are not hard. You will figure it out. And if you have, go ahead and skip forward because you know the drill. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start on this first card slot. The first card slot is toward the middle of the panel, and I'm going to pull off just that tape. I'm going to take one edge of my landscaping material and I'm going to lay it on top of that tape, and I'm going to center it. Now you might notice that my landscape material is not as wide as my card slot cuts, and that's intentional. I don't think it's necessary to cut material that wide, but if you want to, go for it. I find that when the card is in there and the wallet is completed, there's not enough wiggle room for any issues, but if it makes you feel better making your card slot material as wide as your card slots, have at it. Okay, but so now we've got it stuck, and we've got the excess going toward the top of the panel, covering the rest of the card slots. And now carefully I'm going to take it, flip the panel over, and we're going to stitch just under that first card slot. Now, if you need to, you can mark using a chalk line or washi tape where the card slot lines begin and end. I just like to live on the wild side and hope that I start and stop in the right area. I did decent on that one. Okay, so now you're going to flip it back over. And this is what it should look like where you've caught the edge of your card slot material. You're going to take that excess and flip it down toward the bottom. You're going to pull it taut, but you're not going to pull on it to where it's pulling on the panel. You're just going to pull it taut. And then now you have a nice folded edge here. And you're going to take the card slot template, or you can use one of these guys from Carolina Little Stitches, or you can use a regular card and you lay it. But for this tutorial, I'm going to use this Carolina Little Stitches. I just got this guy and I really love it. So it basically tells you where to line up your cut card slot on this dash line for vertical and on this dash line for horizontal. And it has been a really, really handy little tool. I've been just eyeballing it with a regular card, and that works fine for me, but sometimes they're not always equidistant, so this has been a nice little investment. I'll leave the link for these below. My only thing, or just something to take note of, is that she does have a long turnaround time, so that's just something to consider when you order one, so be sure to give yourself plenty of time. But it's the handiest little tool. So now what I'm doing is I'm taking this dash line and I'm lining it up right here on this first card slot. And then again, with this excess pulled taut, I'm going to flip it up and around this card and put my finger down here on the bottom so that I can hold that fold and slide this card out of the way. Pick off the paper backing on my tape. And then I'm going to carefully flip it back up and over and apply pressure, stick it to that tape. And then flip and stitch just under the second card slot this time. And now this is the process that we're going to be repeating all the way up to the top. So I'll explain it to you one more time, and then I'm going to time lapse it so that this goes a little quicker. So pull the excess down toward the bottom. Smooth it out if it's as wrinkly as mine, pulling it taut. Take your card slot template, get her lined up and over, keep your crease with your finger, peel your paper. Now this can feel very foreign when you're first starting to do recessed card slots, and that is totally normal. I've just made about a bajillion of these wallets, so I can do this really quickly and adeptly, but give yourself some grace if you're just learning how to do it. I'm going to flip the whole panel back over, flip just under the third card slot now. Okay, now I'm going to speed it up. Okay, so now we are to the last card slot, and this is so crazy how unruly this is. Normally it lays nice and flat, so don't let this dissuade you from trying landscape fabric if you haven't tried it yet. But anyway, so we are to our last card slot right here, but we need to do the whole process again in order for this card slot to be functional. So we're going to pull our excess down, line up our card slot template again on that last line. And then we're just going to stick it to this wide piece of tape that we put up here. And if you want to, you can stitch it in place, but I have never had problems with not stitching it. I just apply it to the glue or to the tape, just like that, and it's been fine. Now, something that I have started doing recently is I like to put a piece of double stick tape here right down the center just to hold all the card slots in place, but it also, I can start it from above the card slot, this last card slot, and then I end it down here below the bottom card slot, and it keeps everything nice and in place, and then I know that this won't slip out of the way. But I'm gonna grab my 1/2 inch tape for that. And so I'm just going to take a piece, I start it up here at the top, and I go right down the center. You do want to make sure that your card slots are laying correctly, and because mine is so damn wrinkly, kind of as being a bear. Now this is not the easy tear, so you definitely have to cut the hyper stick. Okay, so I like to leave the paper on for now because what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this. We're going to do the first fold of the wallet, and I don't want it to stick yet. I'm just going to finger press. And what I'm going to do is this edge here, I'm going to line it up on the second notch, the second mark that we made. So you line that up, both sides, and I like to finger press it really well. And then we're going to stitch across this finger press. Now you can angle your corners or you can leave them straight. It's totally up to you. I'm going to leave this one straight. Then now what I like to do, okay, where am I? Okay, right here. So what I like to do is I pull this back and expose this double stick tape, and then now I'll peel the paper and stick it into place. And you really want to pay attention to your sides. You want everything to line up nicely because this is the first fold. It's the beginning of the wallet. So you want to make sure that everything is lined up and looking good and crisp starting off. I don't know why I put that clip there. Okay, so once you have your double stick tape, what I like to do is flip it. So before it looked like this, we had our card slots facing us. Flip the whole panel over, and you're going to grab this section that's farthest away from you, pull it back toward you, and what we're looking for is you're going to see lines here. So when you pull it back, they're going to be the lines that you see closest to the card slots, and you're going to line up those lines with this second line from this edge. And finger press that really well. And then for this, I just do clips to hold it in place. And this is what it should look like. So now what we've created is our cash slot. This up here is the inside top flap. This down here is going to become our zip panel. You should have seen me writing this pattern. It was a total mind game, but I'm really, really proud of it because I think it's pretty ingenious the way that it all comes together, but figuring out these folds was insane. Okay, so now that we've got this one ready to go, we'll put that to the side. We're going to grab our other one from before. Our glue has set up nicely. So we are ready to do the same card slot situation that we just completed doing to get this panel all done. But first I'm going to add a piece of tape underneath that first card slot. And then now we're just going to move through just like we did the other one. Okay, so we are done with our card slots, and now what we need to do is add our double stick tape. And this is optional. You don't have to add double stick tape here. This is a new thing for me, but I really like it. And you don't have to use 1/2 inch. I used 1/4 inch for a long time. That's something that I notice about watching videos is we like feel inclined to buy the same stuff that the people in the video are using, the tools and such, but you really don't have to go out and buy a ton of stuff to start sewing. So just get whatever you can afford and, you know, use that. There was a time that I didn't have glue or tape ever. Barely had clips. I remember when I used to use like alligator clips, like binder clips to hold stuff together. And now these little guys, you know, they're just the standard, but alas. Okay, so we have our card slots done here. And now for this one, it's super simple. We're just gonna fold it right in half, lining up our 2 short edges. Making sure that our edges meet up nicely. And I'm going to finger press and then stitch right along this edge. And so now what I like to do with the card slots facing up, folded edge toward the top, I just flip all of that toward me. Then I'm just going to grab the one section and I'm going to fold it. And just like before, I'm going to take this line that's drawn and line it up to the second line from this side. Finger press and then clip. And this is what this side looks like, and we just created the other card slot. So now we have the 2 completed sections. These are both of the interior sections, and the way that this is going to work is if you rotate them, this is now the top and this is now the bottom. This is going to create the zipper. So that's going to go there, and then that's going to fold up and create the pouch. And then it will look just like that. But before we do the zipper, I want to add this interior strip that we talked about earlier. So on the back side of this panel, there are 2 lines, 2 marks, and we need to place this in between those marks, but on the other side. So you have to, I generally like to just make the marks using chalk or some sort of erasable pen right here, just along the inside, so I can eyeball it and line it up. So I'm gonna do that. You can also just, if you have the template, which if you plan on making any amount of these, this really is a good investment. These are the most expensive templates, but that's because well, I guess they're not the most expensive. They're the biggest pain in the butt to mail, I'll tell you that. Oh, thank goodness. They're very durable, didn't break. But yeah, so you can use your pattern piece or you can just flip and, you know, figure out where you need to place this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to eyeball it and I'm going to place it in between those marks. And so what I'm looking for is, I want this to be straight, because if it's not straight, it's going to throw off the whole top flap of my wallet. I want it to be straight, and I want it to be as even as possible, but I'm not going nuts with like measuring it. I'm not super duper worried about it. But so another tip that I picked up on, I started doing it recently, is once I have this glued into place, usually you don't add your interfacing or your stabilizer until the very end. But what I've started doing is I will tape this to the back side here, where it would go at the end of, like right toward the end of the video or toward the end of the construction process. But what I like to do now is I will tape it down now, and then when I'm sewing, I stitch it into place, and having the stitch lines through the interfacing through both layers of cord really adds a lot more structure along the back or the top. So I'm just going to add a piece of double stick tape to hold this into place. And then just like on the front, how I centered the piece in between my two marks, I'm going to do the same back here. And then now I'm going to go to the machine, and from the front side, I'm going to stitch around all 4 edges. I like to take a needle case and I slide it under the left side because my hardware right now is making this very cattywampus. But if you even out the presser foot, if you just even it out, I guess that's all the words that needs, then it stitches correctly. Otherwise, you're going to get some crazy stitches. So until my foot is all the way off this D-ring, I'm going to keep this needle case under the foot. And then once it's off, you can remove it and stitch like normal. I don't know why, but I always pull my threads through on the back side of this and tie it off. You just get like weird sewing quirks. This is one of mine. But I don't tie off almost anywhere else. A lot of people tie off behind every single card slot. I just ain't got time for all that. Tie that off really well. But then you can see now this interfacing is stitched down, and you can see also that this is slightly off, but it doesn't matter because it rests within that 1-inch top boxed edge section. Last thing that we need to do to finish off this interior top section is add our remaining magnetic snaps. So we're going to do that from the back. We're going to do it just like before, using the washer to make our marks. Okay. There we go. The next step to finishing our interior is we need to attach the 2 pieces with the zipper. Oops, just dropped it. So what I'm going to do is, working with the top section first and the zipper tape, I'm going to move this bottom section out of the way. And I like my zipper to open from the left side. If you want it to open from the right side, just simply switch it to where your pull is wherever you want it to be. Now, because this edge is going to be left raw, what I'm going to do is burn all the little fuzzies off, and I'm going to Mod Podge this edge here. And while I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and Mod Podge this other edge so that I don't have to, you know, take it out again. I'm actually going to use base coat. You can use whatever you want. Glue, base coat, Mod Podge. Just your world. Now you can also do this at the very beginning before you even start sewing. If you're Mod Podging the other pieces, you just have to ensure that you're getting the right edge. It's not going to hurt it if you accidentally do the wrong edge, but you know, whatever. Okay, I'm going to take some double stick tape and I'm going to apply it to the back side. Like so. Make sure you get a bunch of cat hair stuck in it. Adds authenticity. No, really, that's gross. Don't do that. Now I'm going to get my zipper all lined up so that it is ready to go. Once I peel the tape, I'm going to move the pull out of the way. Still hair. Oh, that's my hair. Ooh, even better. And now I'm just going to lay it right on the zipper tape. Gosh, this curved cork is such a pain in the butt. I even rolled it in the opposite direction, but I obviously didn't leave it for long enough. Now I'm paying really close attention to my zipper tape. I want it to be nice and straight here. I don't want the tape to be all wavy. So I'm paying close attention to that now so that I can fix it before it becomes a problem. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this whole panel over and I'm going to add a piece of tape along the raw bottom edge of the zipper. And I'm going to grab one of my zipper linings and put this into place. So I'm going to do it so right side down with the excess hanging away from the zipper. Centered. You'll notice that this is not as wide as the panel, and I did that on purpose. So center it. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the machine and I'm going to stitch just across this section there. And then I'm going to attach this side, repeating that whole process, just opposites. But you'll see all that when we're at the machine. Okay, now from this side, what you're going to do is pull just your pocket lining back, fold it down and out of the way. And I like to glue or put a piece of tape here just to hold it in place. There we go. And then now we're just going to repeat that whole process with the remaining lining piece, or interior piece rather. You'll notice I didn't use a piece of tape the entire width because I just need something to hold this into place while I flip it and stitch it. So it doesn't, you don't have to use the full width if you're comfortable with, like, you know, holding onto it while it flips. Okay, so now we're going to flip the entire panel over, stitch this side. Okay, so same thing with a piece of double stick tape here, just to hold this lining piece, keep it in place. I always like to flip it from this way. I feel like I get more control over this fold. And so there we go. So now we have an almost zipper panel. So here we have it. Got this ready to go. We are getting very close to being done, which is very exciting, but there are just a couple things that we want to pay attention to when we're doing the next couple of steps to ensure that this interior lays on the exterior nicely. Because if you've attempted to make one of these, then you know that this can be a tricky pattern. And yes, you just have to really pay attention to the measurements. So to create this zipper panel, when you flip over, you see these two marks. Those are the marks that you're going to stitch on to create this bottom fold here. But of course, they're hard to see because they're on the other side. So what I like to do is fold it so my zipper panel is right sides together. And then if you line up these two folds, then those two lines in a perfect world will line up. So what I like to do is line up those two folds and move my clips. And I'll flip. And then I want to make sure that there's no bubble. So I'm going to lay it down and apply some pressure. And then again, line up these two folds down here on this end and clip into place. So now what we need to do is just transfer our stitch line here across the bottom. I'm trying to think of how I want to stitch it. I don't think it really matters. Okay, so you're going to measure 3 inches. Pretty sure it's 3 inches. Let's see. Yes. So from the fold up here, you're going to mark 3 inches, and that's going to be your stitch line. And again, in a perfect world, that should match up, and it's pretty damn close, so that's exciting. So I'm going to add, where did they go? A clip just up here to hold that in place, and then again on this side. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the machine. I'm going to start my stitching up here at the top right, back stitch really well, come down and stitch across and then back up. And then that will create our zipper panel like magic. And now if this is correct, then you should have more than enough room for your presser foot to fit through this channel. When you unzip, ta-da! So much room for activities. You can remove these clips that are holding it together. You also could put double stick tape here if you don't want to use a bunch of clips. Totally up to you. Where did I clip that? And so now you can see it's starting to come together, man. Here is what we're looking at now. And what I like to do is before I double stick tape my edges here, I'm going to grab my exterior and I'm going to lay this whole interior piece right on top, wrong sides together. And I'm going to visually ensure that it fits correctly. And if it doesn't, this is the time when you're going to want to shift your folds. You would unclip here. So say your interior is too short. You would unclip one of your folds, one of your cash slot folds, and pull it to where it lines up, and you'll see that this whole section here is going to shift and move around, and then you can re-clip where it needs to be and just finger press and create a nice fold there. However, mine as is fits well, so I'm just going to put the clips back into place. And again, at this point from the back, what you should be seeing is that this fold here lines up to these marks that we made, and that this fold here lines up to these marks that we made. And so this is right underneath the zipper pouch. And then of course the card slots are to the left and right of that. And so I'm going to flip it, and I'm going to start here on my left side, and I'm going to line up just a rough line up over here, hold it in place. And then if I just let it lay naturally, you can see it looks kind of cattywampus over here. But what I can do is I can apply a little pressure and just align those edges. And then I can put some pressure on either side of the zip pouch, and now I can see that it's going to fit my exterior piece nicely. So I know that I can move forward. So you can leave your clips here, or you can add some double stick tape. And to add the double stick tape, I just pull up a clip. And then right here underneath the cash slot and the card slots, I'm going to add a piece of tape. Oops. On both sides. And I'm really paying attention to making sure that my edges are nice and lined up here. I'm putting the tape about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge, but like I touched on earlier, if your machine doesn't give you guff whenever you're sewing over tape, you can put it right to the very edge. But having the tape there just really holds it down nicely without having the bulk of the clip in the way. Okay, get this stuff out of the way here. And so now in the original pattern, I told you to lay your interfacing or your stabilizer on the exterior piece, and you can do that. But what I have found in my experience with making these is that sometimes, occasionally, the folds don't exactly line up how they're supposed to. So if you see, if you can tell here, on this exterior piece that's here on the bottom, I have those two marks. Now, in a perfect world, what should happen is my zipper box should line up right over that. But if I do that, then you see I have a little bit of overhang here for my interior. So what I like to do now is on my actual interior piece is where I'm gonna lay my stabilizer. So I'm gonna finger press the zipper pouch really well, finger press my cash slots really well. Just make sure all the folds are nice and finger pressed. You can use glue, or you can also use double stick tape. Just, you know, it's easier, quicker, so I'm gonna use double stick tape. I'm gonna start here with this piece that goes under my zipper pouch, and that is gonna be this stabilizer piece that I talked about in the beginning. And to make sure that it doesn't move around on me, I'm gonna put some double stick tape right here. And then I'll put some double stick tape along both the top and bottom of this. And then now what I'm gonna do is peel off just one side of the double stick tape, and I'm gonna center it right on top of this zipper box fold here, in between my two marks. Sorry, it's kind of hard for me to hold and show properly, but right in between these two marks here and here and down here. And there's gonna be a little gap on the left and right side, and that is intentional because that's what we're gonna sew right next to that. But so that is the placement mark. And when you stick it directly underneath your zipper bottom, you know that you're going to get the nice crisp edge exactly where you want it to be. And so if it's a little off, you can peel it and re-stick it like so. And now I'm going to go through and add my stabilizer to the rest of my spots. Now, if you're going to be doing, what's it called? Like beveled edges, if you're going to snip your corners, then you're going to want to snip your corners on both of your small stabilizer pieces. You're going to snip them up here where it'll be at the top and down here where it'll be at the bottom. But because I'm doing straight edges, I'm just going to leave mine as is. But so right now I'm going to add the very top piece, move this out of the way, and the very bottom piece. And this last piece is the one that's a little bit wider. You can see how much bigger it is, and that's going to go here. So I'm just going to go through and add some tape. I just like to do one big diagonal section. If you want to, you can do several strips. It's totally up to you. You can go ahead and add it on both sides. Peel one side and stick to here. Now, whenever I'm sticking on this section, or on the top and bottom, both, I'm leaving about 3/16, at least 1/8, but I like to leave about 3/16 of an inch here. You can get it closer to this notch than you want it to the edge over here, because whenever you fold this later, you're going to have a gap there. So it's not going to, it's more important to have it closer to this section toward the center than it is to this top edge. And I'm going to repeat that for the other pieces. And then same thing, you want it to be closer to this bottom edge than this edge up here. And then lastly, sometimes I find that this piece is a little bit too wide, and that can just be where the shifts come whenever I'm folding and whenever I'm doing the work. And if you find that this piece is too wide, you can trim off about 1/8 of an inch. Now mine is going directly to the bottom of my fold, and that's okay, again, because once the wallet is fully constructed, this back piece is going to be along the back side, whereas this bottom piece is going to be creating the bottom edge. So I'm not too concerned with it, but if you need to shave off a little bit, go for it. And so because this piece is bigger, I am going to do a couple pieces to hold it in place. What I don't want with the Craft Tex especially is I don't want it to be loosey-goosey on the inside of the wallet, because it is so stiff, you will feel it in there. And so if it's shifting and moving around on you, it's going to be apparent. So make sure you're using enough tape or glue to keep it situated exactly where you want it. Okay, so now we have our stabilizer in place, and we're going to attach the interior to the exterior. Now, what you need to pay attention to is your orientation. Of course, you want your bottom. I like to have my bottom on the left side of my work, or the right side of my workstation, but you need your snaps to be on opposite ends. So the bottom, they're over here on my right, and the interior, they're over here on my left. And I like to start on my top flap. So I'm going to peel that tape, and I'm going to carefully align it up here on the left side of my workstation. And I'm paying really close attention to my edges here. Oh, I just realized I forgot to put double stick tape here along this edge, so I'm gonna put some there as well. And so I just like to go down the line. I'm gonna peel the tape. I'm gonna carefully flip this back over, line up my edge, stick into place. And this is, the whole time I'm paying attention to where this is going to end on this edge, because as you tape, you need to ensure that you're applying the right amount of pressure to make sure that it lays correctly. Joppa is mad. He's outside and pissed that I'm not coming to let him back in immediately. Now, if you get to this spot and you do still see some overlap, just maneuver it until you get everything to line up nicely. And it's not always a graceful affair. So there we go. So now you can see there's still a little tiny overlap here, and that's okay. I can maneuver it and shift it around and play with it to get it to fit like so. And so this is what it looks like. It can look a little lumpy bumpy, and that's okay because as soon as we stitch it down, it's all gonna settle in. But if you need to, you can fold it and kind of apply pressure here along your bottom edge and fold this top down, and you can see exactly how it's going to fit together. And if you have any weirdness in it, you want to fix it now before you stitch it. If your flap is at an angle, either way, you're going to want to make some amendments to it now. But so you can see my card slot panel is bubbled, and that's totally fine because again, once I stitch it, that's all going to settle into place. What I'm looking at right now is making sure that my folded edges are nice and straight, and that my tag is nice and all of that. My tag's up a little high on this guy. And so once you get it where you want it, you can unsnap it, and then we're gonna move to the machine, and we're gonna sew this top section, and then we're gonna flip this down and sew this bottom section. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start on the top right side of my card slot panel. You can start wherever you'd like. That's just always where I start. I'm gonna stitch down, and you should feel a little channel in through here where the gap from the zipper pouch and the end of your card slots is. You can see it right there. So you should feel that channel, but I'm going to stitch down into that channel, and I'm going to put my foot, my presser foot, right in the middle of that channel. So a straight line down, pivot, come back up, come all the way up and around and end my stitches there. And then I'm going to do the same on this side. I like to start here at my card slots, so down, across, back down, and then I'm going to seat my presser foot right in that channel, right through there again, and then stitch all the way around. So here is what we're looking at now. You can see I have all of my sides stitched down. Everything looks good. I have a little bit of overhang here, which that's fine. I'm just gonna trim that down a bit. And you could, what I like to do at this point is I would just fold it, and I would kind of rock the bottom back and forth to create that definition. And then fold my flap down. and just kind of put some pressure on those folds to create those edges where you want them to be. I can tell my Craft Tex was rolled this way because my flap wants to roll up and away. So to mitigate that, I'll just mess with it and kind of flex it to where it lays straight. Alternatively, you can watch my other video where I show you how to quilt this section before stitching it all together, and then that would alleviate that really easily. But lastly, all that I would do is just go around and trim up any edges that I have, and then I would just finish my edges with, I'd like to use edge coat, of course. I'm sure you guys already know that. Oh yeah, something else I was going to point out. So sometimes when we're stitching in this ditch, in this channel here, it doesn't get all the way to the end on here. So whenever you have the wallet closed, it creates this little divot. Now you can fix that by adding a couple small rivets here very close to the edge. But what I like to do is, if it's really bothering me, what I'll go back and do is I'll add another stitch line right here in between the stitch from the zipper pouch and the stitch next to the card slots. And I'll bring it all the way to the end and stitch all the way down to that end. And what that does is it just adds 2 more stitch lines here along the bottom, which just makes that bottom edge stronger, and it pulls this section down tighter. Another alternative that I like to do is I just kind of goop maybe some glue, or I'll just put a small strip of double stick tape in there. And then when I'm edge coating, I'll build up my base coat, and as it's drying, I'll put clips right there so you can see it seals up that little hole. And I'll do that until the edge coat sets up, and then I'll take it off so I don't get clip marks. But I build up the base coat until that edge is nice and flush with all the rest of them, and then I paint like normal. Yeah, so then you would just attach your strap and admire. This is a really cool cork. This is a discontinued cork. Or, well, actually, I'm not sure. I bought this cork off of one of my customers. She reached out to me. She was going out of business, and so I purchased her cork from her. But another thing, now that I'm thinking about it, that I do suggest doing, which you might want to do earlier so that if you do have any issues with your card slots, you can fix it before you're to the end. But I like to go through and slide a card in each slot, make sure that they're all laying nicely as well. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate you watching this video all the way to the end. Be sure to leave me a comment, hit the like button, and subscribe so that you can be the first to know whenever new construction videos come up. But either way, I hope that you really enjoyed making this wallet along with me, and I will see you next time.